What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down how wide receivers can stop getting jammed off the line of scrimmage from a DB. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things, but also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you would like to train with us this offseason, I and my staff of coaches are going to be coming out to 15 states across the country for 2-day-long QB wide receiver camps. So next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to San Francisco. That camp is sold out, but then we'll be coming out to Orlando, New Orleans, Charlotte, Dallas, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys are local to one of those cities, would like to train with myself, my staff of coaches for 2 whole days, check out that very first link in the description below with all the info. Let's get started with this video. So now, first things first, when you're coming up to the line, and maybe you do not know if a DB is going to jam you, he's going to lunge at you right off the line, you can use something called a step back release. Now, a step back release is one of those highly criticized releases because a lot of people think that it takes too long. You always want to be attacking vertical on a DB to keep timing with your quarterback. One-on-ones sometimes can be very unrealistic. So in a real game scenario, how do you use this step back type release? So we're looking at an example. This is Jerry Jeudy, and he does a step back, but it's not one of those outrageous step back moves where you jump back. So if we don't know that this DB is going to lunge at us, if he's right up on the line, not giving me any space, I want you to watch what Jeudy does with his front foot. So he comes off the ball and takes just a tiny step just to get a read on the DB and to gather info. That is how you do the step back release effectively. So many times wide receivers, what they'll do on this step back is they won't just take a step. They'll jump back a couple yards. They make all these moves and then they get up into the route. Now, the issue with that, fellas, is that it can screw up timing. Now, in one-on-ones, quarterback's not getting blitzed. In 7-on-7, he's got a timer, but, quarterbacks usually just take one step from the tee and just sit there. It's not realistic. In a real game scenario, this is the realistic way to use that step back release when you might think that a DB is going to lunge and get physical because you're creating space for yourself. That's the main goal of the step back. So he comes up to the line, you think he's going to get physical. Maybe you've seen him get physical before. That step back just creates some space between the two of you. So now you can get a read on him. If he lunges at you, he's going to have to really reach to get you because you step back and create that space. Now you could also get a read on him. If he starts to do this inch back technique where you do this step back and he starts to motor back like so, then you could go into his leverage. Then you could get up into the route and give a move or burst up and try to stack. So that step back release, it's a subtle step. Create some space for yourself to avoid that jam from the DB. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great example from Jeudy here using that step back release, fellas. This is one of the best ways that you guys can, get a feel for a DB. If he's real physical, you create some space for yourself and be able to operate the route. It's all about space. Now, one other thing I want to mention too, fellas, before I play this again. If that DB's overcrowding the line, and let's say you're at a camp scenario, right? You're at some kind of tryout, whatever, and you always get that DB who just sits right on the line and tries to get physical and get hands. Nobody said you had to be on the ball. So if it's one-on-ones, dude, just step off the ball. If it's a real game scenario, that's when you would want to use this because you can't just change up if you're on the ball or off the ball. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. So great job using that step back, getting into that DB's cushion, and beating him on that inch back technique. Okay, so now we got a question yesterday from one of you guys, and I appreciate always the feedback, you guys. If you have any video suggestions, I always appreciate it. Feel free to leave those in the comment section because I read all the comments and I really appreciate it. So we had a question, how do I avoid, off of the press, so I give a move, whatever, and I get into my stem, how do I avoid the DB getting hands on me after the release and kind of walling me to the sideline, if you will? Now, this is a great example of what to do off the line when the DB tries to jam throughout the stem. Okay, so let's play this full speed. So this wide receiver is running a comeback route. So I want you to see how the DB fights hands, but he's able to keep a low pad level position and get skinny on the route. So he's running a comeback, right? So DB lined up inside shade. Going to try to get physical. We know that when a DB is inside shade, where is he trying to force us? He's trying to force us to the outside, right? He's trying to force us to the 12th defender on the field, which would be the sideline. So when he's trying to force us to the sideline, he is going to probably jam with his right hand, but to take an outside release, I know that I just have to beat his outside hand. He's going to try to jam with the inside, maybe two-handed jam. We don't necessarily know, but all I got to do is beat his outside hand to get up into the route. And that comes from keeping a good pad level and having a plan with your hands. So you see off the line, number one, we should attack his leverage, right? We should threaten his leverage to the inside. I attack him, I give him a move, and now when I burst up to the outside, we know that he's going to try to recover with his right hand. That's what DBs do because they're trying to protect the inside. If he's inside leverage, he's going to protect with his inside hand, trying to wall you to that sideline. But how I can avoid that is by keeping a good pad level. So many wide receivers off the line, the reason why they get jammed is they'll do this move, they'll give a jab inside, but then they stand straight up. They try to avoid this guy and run, but they pick their pad level up, they pop their chest up, and this DB is going to get hands and squeeze you right to the sideline because you're running too high. If he gets hands on you, so what? We got off the press. All we got to do is be able to fight that hand and keep a good pad level position so I can go hip to hip with him. If I stand up tall and I let him get into my cushion and force me all the way to the sideline, then I have no room to run this comeback, and I got pretty much rerouted. Quarterback's not going to give us the ball, especially when it's outside breaking. So we have to make sure we are staying low. We have a plan with my hands, and we know what hand he is probably going to jam with. But the goal is to be able to get skinny, to give that quarterback as much space to throw us open as possible. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps you guys out in terms of that situation. But just understand, fellas, we only have to take an outside release. We only got to beat his outside hand. We know he's probably going to jam with the inside hand. He's going to try to protect the inside. So what? If I get off the ball, I stay in a low pad level position, I could get up into the route. That's why you guys have probably seen this drill before where wide receivers will come off the ball and they have like a setup of cones. Like they have a cone right here, cone right here, cone right here, and then there's a towel. And then a receiver gives a move, stays tight, and they pick up the towel. That's to work on that low pad level position. They stay nice and tight to the cones. They're getting skinny. They're dipping their shoulder. That is what can help you avoid getting rerouted throughout the stem of your route. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver, giving a jab inside, taking that outside release, and staying skinny and staying hip to give the QB space to throw us open. All right, so now this next example here, this is Rashad Bateman, and he's going to be doing something we call a slide release. So what is a slide release? I'm sure you guys have all seen this at one point. Maybe you've heard me talk about it. But a slide release is pretty much like you would use it. I would use it personally only on a slant or maybe like a 5-yard in, but it's where you give this kind of like hesitation, skip to the outside, give a crossover, and get that DB to flip his hips. So why am I using this example here when we're talking about beating a jam? We're talking about getting off of like press with a physical DB. Why are we talking about this? Because off the line, to avoid a jam, it is usually about angles. So what angle do you take off the line in terms of your release so that DB gets off the platform? Because with all of your releases, like you got to think about it like there's a point in time when and every single man coverage where a DB has to make a decision. If you sell the route enough, he has to either honor it or he has to just sit. Right? So on a slide release, so many guys are afraid. Like we use a slide when he's inside shade. We slide to the outside, attacking his outside shoulder, and then we give this crossover to sell like we're running the fade. The goal is to get this DB to open up his hips. But everybody's biggest fear with this type of release is that a DB just sits to the inside. So how can we force him to move off the platform? And that comes from the angle that you take off the line. So we don't end up running into him and then getting jammed. So when Bateman comes off the ball here, so many guys with this slide release, what they'll do is they go lateral. So they'll slide, but they would stay almost like behind the line of scrimmage. Now, even if that DB bites with us, there's too big of a gap. When you cut to the slant from behind the line of scrimmage, that DB is just going to easily recover because he has the angle. He has the leverage in that situation. But when you do this slide release or a diamond release or any kind of release where you're attacking the outside shoulder, if you attack on almost like a 45-degree angle, he has to pick one. He has to either sit to the slant or has to either run with the fade. And if we've maybe set this release up with a fade before, that's a great way to get him to go. But we have to make our releases look the same. Like how many times have you seen Devontae Adams use this type of release where he'll go here, he'll hesitate to the outside and then just take off and run. If he hesitates and then just takes off and run, that DB is going to be sitting to the inside and then we're going to win on the fade. We got him by a step and that's all we need. So if I've maybe done that before, maybe I've done that when I'm not getting the ball, this slide release, I take that same 45-degree angle. What does that look like? That looks like a fade. I sell with my hips and my shoulders, and that gets the DB to open up. But with my outside moves, where I'm attacking that outside shoulder, I have to make sure I'm attacking at a 45-degree angle to force that DB to make a decision. Do not go flat, and do not get too close. That's another thing that guys will do. They take this too literal. So instead of going flat, instead of going 45, they will hesitate, but they'll run right at this DB. That's a great way to get jammed too. So make sure we're at that angle where the DB has to make a decision. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great example here of this slide release from Rashad Bateman and being able to use that crossover to win on that slant versus inside shade. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, if you'd like to train with us in 15 different states this offseason, fellas, check out that very first link in the description below. If we were coming to a city near you or you would like to travel out to get some work in with us, I'll see you guys next time.